Here we are. It is December 31st. It is December 31st of 2020. We made it. We made it. We made it. Well, I'm not going to jack around any. I'm going to get to work. Here we go. So, if you were here with me yesterday, I started a little bit early. I was looking at the screen. I was like, come on, let's go. Let's go. What's up, Kenny? So, if you were with me yesterday, we started working on figuring out what we're going to do in this negative space in terms of the detail, and we figured it out. And so now I'm just going to do it for real. So when I was doing this part yesterday, I was kind of doing it pretty rough and quick just to figure it out. And so now I'm going to do it for real. I'm not going to do a rough draft like this. I'm going to simply do the final drawing first off on this one here that we did yesterday, and then the rest of it. Excuse me for coughing. So I'm going to do it in a bright color just so I can see it, and it'll make the whole process easier. I might even do it in yellow or something. Just make sure my brushes are all ready to go. Hello, Bladder Productions. Good morning. Okay, I'm on a new layer. Wait, what is this other file open here? Let's get this out of here. Oh, yes, that's the King's Wild Tigers Matchbox. Get that out of here. Nope. Okay. We're ready to go. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is draw my spine. Oof. Gotta warm up, people. My lines aren't very smooth. Nor are my arcs. I think I mentioned this a few days ago that, just like with anything, got to warm up. And this, I literally just woke up. So what I'm going to do now is just draw these beginning elements of each of these things. And I'm taking a little more time than I was yesterday. I was kind of going through this really fast. And the only reason why is because this should be the final drawing that I'm going to use. It's not going to be this color. Don't get nervous. Which I like this green, but it will not be this color. Already getting a little bit warmer. That's good. I can definitely tell just from making simple strokes if I'm not warmed up or not. So what you'll see me do is you'll see me overshoot a shape. So like right here, I'll start way back before. Man, sorry about that. You'll see me start way before like that. And the reason why I do that is so that I can come back and erase and have a sharp point just like that and like that. Because if I didn't do that, just because the way Photoshop works, if I were to just to, draw this angle, I would have this dull, rounded edge, which I do not want to have. So you'll see me making these little X's like that. And that's just me going across, going a little bit farther than I need to, so that I can come back like this and erase it and have a nice crisp point. This is the tuck case of the standard edition. Just beef that up a little bit. The good news is, especially with the flowers, I can be lazy and reuse the joy of having a computer. I can reuse the drawing. I won't do it with every time I have a flower, but I would say 50% of the time. What I may do is I'll end up drawing like 2 or 3 of the flowers. And then once I get 2 or 3 of them, that'll give me enough variety in shape to then copy and paste and reuse the flowering shapes. And then I'll just make it go. That'll make it go a little bit quicker. It'll be more efficient use of time. And I wouldn't encourage you to do that. Like, I wouldn't say do that with one. If like you're doing something, if you're an artist and you're doing something similar to this, I wouldn't say do that. Like draw one and then recopy the one and reuse that. I wouldn't do that. You want to have a little variety. And if you copy something once or a lot, especially like this, I say that, but in all honesty, this is going to be really subtle in the background. And so you probably won't be able to tell anyways, but I'm just telling you because I want you to learn something as well if you're an artist trying to do something like this. I would say draw 2 or 3. That way you have a few different varieties. And then once you have 2 or 3, then you can copy those. I could draw an ellipse. I could draw a circle selection and make a circle like this for this part, like this. I could go, take my selection tool and draw a circle and fill it. Could do that. That would make it easy. But I want this to have a hand-drawn feel, so I'm just going to do this. And that'll also keep everything a little bit more hand-drawn. I'm going to make a new layer to make these little wedges. And the only reason why I made a new layer is because when I come back to erase, I don't want to have to mess with the other stuff. So I'm making these things a little bit fat and big. And you can see this is a good example of the rounded corners. Excuse me. Apologize for that. You can see that these rounded corners, how kind of like bubbly these look. Once I go back with the eraser, I can just erase like that. And see how nice and sharp those are now. It's a little trick I learned back in, let's see here. Just like that. Let's draw. Now, I'm going to go ahead and merge those now that they're on the same thing. So I got every Control S. Going to start early. Control S. I'm going to come back. I'm using Photoshop to do this. That's not what I want. I need to draw the vein. And see, just in the same way, I can go back and paint these edges like this to make those points really nice and clean and sharp, just like I'm doing now here. And I can also do that because I'm trying to visually line the veins of this flower to the top of the thing. What I may do now is come down here and then purposefully round off this bottom edge, just one of the bottom edges, just to give it a little bit of a shape. Give it shape, a little bit of dynamicness. So you can see like one sharp, one rounded point. Take a drink of water. The old asthma lung is acting up this morning. Sorry. Having a wee bit of a little trouble breathing this morning, but that's okay. It sometimes happens in the morning with me. I'm just going to sharpen up these points a little better and work on that curve. Want to do this right because I'm going to be reusing it, especially if you're going to be reusing an element of a drawing. You might as well make it really nice. Okay, that looks really good. Control S. All right, now I'm going to come back. Then I'm going to do the same here. Control S. This detail, this detail can be covered up with way less than a pinky. I mean, this this in terms of scale, I mean, this is the size of a deck, and this 1/2 is just this. I mean, you can be covered up with half of detail. And I try to find the, what's up, Jason Diggy Clark? And I try to find the fine balance between, because I definitely, there are a lot of artists that will struggle. And I don't say struggle, I mean, there's a lot of playing card artists that will just struggle over perfection. Now, just artists in general, not just playing card artists. I definitely don't try. Do not try to strive for perfection. I think there was a saying. I can't remember what it said, but it was like, perfection is something like the enemy. I can't remember. But I think a lot of times creatives will hang too much stock in their work in terms of just like, oh, this is my, that kind of like you're good as your last game mentality, which, I mean, there's part of that that's true, but I personally think there's a part of that that's a bunch of bull crap, because even if your last game is horrible, and when I say game, I just kind of referring to the comparison to like sports. If your last game was horrible, then that's a great opportunity for you to get a lot better. And I think that artists sometimes will strive for perfection so much that it'll keep them from producing work. And just like with anything, producing work, churning out ideas, churning out, figuring out solutions for problems. Yes, perfection is the enemy of progress. That's it. And they'll say some things like, I want it to be right. I want to make sure I take a long time to make it right. Which, I mean, there's validity in that, but at the same time, there's also validity in doing lots of work that you throw away, or lots of work that doesn't work. That way you can just keep getting better. And I say that mainly from a professional artist standpoint, to where, if you're an artist that's trying to make a living, with your art, I think one of the worst things that you can do, unless you have some kind of celebrity status, I think one of the worst things that you could do is strive for perfection. And I think that's true in any case of life in general. I think now I'm going into my quote mode. I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said something like, what is it? Comparison, what is it? Comparison is, can't remember what the saying is. See, I'm horrible at quote mode. But it's something about comparison is like, I can't even remember. When you, it's about like comparing yourself to other people. And you know, when you're quote unquote striving for perfection, you're just you if you do that, you're having to set yourself up. You're having to gauge yourself against somebody else to be able to say to yourself, okay, this is what I think perfection is, and so this is what I'm going to strive for. So, but you have to look at somebody else, and I think that comparison is, I think that's awful. But I do that tons myself, and I have to fight that myself because it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter what you are compared to somebody else. Like the way that you're an artist, if you're an artist, the important thing is that you're good, you're efficient, and you're proficient. Efficient. And that you can get the job done, because ultimately you're getting paid to do this. And if you're not producing work because you're always striving for perfection, you're going to be a starving artist. That's what I need to do. I need to make up some quote right now that has to do with how the difference between a professional artist and a starving artist is the starving artist strives for perfection. And yes, I know out there that there are special cases sometimes when you've got somebody, I don't know, that strives for perfection and takes 15 years to do one drawing and then releases it. I don't know of any, but I don't want to. I just told you not to compare yourself to other people, but I definitely don't want to try to emulate that kind of work, because that won't cut it for me. I'm paying my bills, people. Control S. You people. You know what? I think that because we're going to be doing a lot of this today, I may take a break later before the show's over and do a cool typography treatment of Control S and make a freaking t-shirt out of it. Because why not? Why wouldn't I do that? I'm warmed up now. I can tell I'm warmed up. My curves are much smoother. I'm able to go much faster. So I'm excited about that. Control S. Oh, I forgot one. Yes, the new Kingswild Threads Control S. And we may do something like draw a little hand engraved looking, Control S key on a keyboard. That's gonna be fun. Let me take a drink of milk. Not milk, but coffee. I don't drink milk. Much better. It's burning my mouth a while ago. So now you're going to start seeing me go into with a pinky. That's another one too. It's a good quote, with a pinky. This is going to be covered up with a pinky. You're about to see me start going into assembly mode or batch mode. And what that means is when I start to feel like once I start getting warmed up and I'm ready to go, you'll start seeing me go much faster, and I'll start doing things in batches. Like I'll go through and do all the spine lines. Oops. I'll do all the spine lines. After I do this little bud, I'm going to start going into batch mode. But it's kind of one of those things of being efficient to get the job done, because I have a I have a process for this. That's what we were figuring out yesterday. It was building the process of how to make these things. And then now I'm going to, up until this point, I've just been kind of waiting until I was warmed up. And it took about 20 minutes. But we're going to go into ludicrous speed here. Well, not ludicrous speed, but we're going to speed up. Okay. So I'm going to Control S before I start going into batch mode. Okay, let's do this. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to set me a line weight for my spine. And I'm going to come in here and draw my spine. Right up here in Photoshop, they have, this is a relatively new thing. They have this option called smoothing. Right now, smoothing is off, and so the stroke is going to go exactly where I take it. I can turn this way up. I can go, let's say, to 70%, and you'll see what happens. What it does is it averages my stroke, and what it does is it smooths it out. So it'll make, you'll notice that my stroke will be behind the cursor, and that's because it's averaging out. But it makes drawing these, long curving arcs a little bit easier. There's good things to it and bad things. The biggest bad thing I think about it is that it definitely, because it's behind, it definitely takes away from the responsiveness of being able to draw quickly and that kind of thing. But for this specific application, I think this is a good use of it because it makes for really nice spiral arcs and such. Clean that up. What kind of amateur line is that? Another reason why, well, not really another reason, just another kind of thing that I've developed that I like doing in this kind of batch way is it's going to make me do this a whole lot faster. But it's also a nice reminder to save. I'll do one thing, one batch thing, and then save. Like I'm going to save right now, Control S. I'm going to redo that. Let's see here. Another drawback with it is you don't get, like if I draw a line and I try to lift up, because my stylus is based on the line weight is based on how much I press. You don't have as much control when you're doing the smoothing, because it's also averaging your pin pressure as well. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little X. Let's see here. How many of those? Okay. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the second batch of stuff, which is going to be the spines of these big leaves. Now, not all of these, so these will be the things that have the berries. Not all of them are going to have the berries. What kind of stylus setup do I have? I have well, I can show you. 1 second. I'll take a picture with my phone. Let's see here. Let me turn the brightness up a little bit here. All right. This is probably not the best way to do this, but I'm doing it anyways. Focus. Focus. There. That's my microphone, keyboard. See the camera shooting at me. And then that's my Wacom Cintiq right in front of me, where I'm just drawing right on it. What I should do is get another camera. And I've been thinking about doing this. Get another camera to set up, kind of over here. And I'm drawing with a little stylus pen. That way you can see me over in the corner as I'm working. Oh yeah, definitely the captain's chair. I got lots of cool lights, buttons, and things. I'm going to make sure I leave some space inside those areas so I can put those big flower buds. I don't know how the weather is yet. If that's what you were referring to or meaning something different. It's dark here, and I haven't looked outside yet. So one thing about scroll work is in the traditional scroll work, and when I say scroll work, I'm talking about these kind of like curly, spirally, acanthus leaf looking things that you see on stuff. There is a rule. Well, it's a simple rule that you see how these leaves are going in this direction, like these little vines are going in these directions, and then these change direction and go the opposite way. It's kind of against the rules of scroll work. You're supposed to like have the beginning, and then all of your stuff is supposed to stuff is supposed to go one direction. But you know what? I don't care. We're going to do it like this. That book that we were looking at yesterday that we kind of got inspired by, this one Where's it at? This one right here. They did the same thing, so, and they're not in jail, so we're gonna do it. Yes, you totally are inspired by other artists. I mean, there's so much art. There's so much art now that it's hard not to be inspired slash infuse other artists' work into your own. I need to bring this one around so I can tuck that flower bud into the center of this circle. Punk rock scroll work. Sure, it sounds good. After Kenny asks, after I finish one side, will I copy and paste over? Yes. You'll notice that if it's basically identical, I'll have to change a little bit of this area right here because this side doesn't have that thumb cut. So I'll have to redraw that. But for the most part, I will just copy and paste. Totally. I agree with you, Sebastian. Doesn't have to be totally the same. And this is these are kind of my take on that style. I'm just checking to see. I need to put some on this one here. Control S. Okay. Okay, I've done basically all of the spine work, I'm calling it. Now I'm going to go back and quickly draw. I'm going to quickly rough in these kind of berry. I'm going to draw the berries, and then I'll come back, and then I'll start drawing the shapes. I'm going to turn off smoothing so I can do these berries quickly. I don't have to do berries on every one of them, but I like it a lot. I like the design. I like the design motif. So I'm going to do it a lot. here. Let's see. Let's start back here. I don't like that. Get out of here. I also think, I'm just thinking about the Control S t-shirt. I think it would be nice to have like a really ornate, like Victorian style typography that says Control S. So it's just like really starkly different. So you have something real high art, high Victorian, but yet it's something very modern, like Control S. Let me see if I did them all here. They're all my berries. My berries done. All right. Let's see here. Take a drink. Control S. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and draw 2 supporting lines on the side like this. And those will end up being the construction. This will just help me make my leaves all kind of matching that flow. Then I'll come back and I'll draw the leaves themselves. But this will just help me make sure that everything, all the arcs are flowing. Do I back up my files? I guess so, yeah. I basically have a work drive, and it's duplicated, locally. And then I have it duplicated like on Dropbox. And so it's continually always, that one work drive is always continually uploading to the cloud. However, I have been wanting to get like a third, because I don't like the internet having everything. And I've been wanting to get a third option for like something here with me, like those little hard drives that you see. I honestly don't know that much about it. And if you guys have any expertise in that kind of thing, I would love some consulting and some help. Figuring out a good option. Yeah, a NAS, N-A-S. That's what I was talking about. I just don't know anything about it, and I'm lazy. And I haven't taken the time to learn anything about it. Can't forget this stuff. I had forgotten about this piece in the middle because it wasn't in our initial batch work. Control S. See, what I should be doing is drawing all the line work for like even this area up here on the Oz that will end up being gold foil. I should be doing all that right at the same time, but I'm not, for the sake of, well, it doesn't really matter. I keep forgetting that these are not like my Sunday Night Lives where I was trying to do everything like in an hour and a half. I'm realizing that these are just me working. I actually almost went live yesterday afternoon just because I felt like working again. But you're all gonna see it anyways, because when I do that area, I'll go live. Ever designed tattoos? I haven't. Yes, I've designed 2 or 3 designs specifically for tattoos, but some people have gotten my artwork tattooed on them after the fact, so maybe kind of indirectly designed tattoos. But I have specifically designed 1 or 2 tattoos over the years. I've been thinking about getting a tattoo, but I just can't. I feel like it's a big decision. I just can't bring myself to it. There's two things. I think that if I got a tattoo, I think these are the things that I would actually get. For the number one thing is the Kingswald logo, because of course, why not? My wife was like, if you get a tattoo, you have to get a tattoo of the Kingswald head, because it's basically you. The second thing, which is much more nerdy, is to get a tattoo, a really cool tattoo of, actually I take it back, there's 3 tattoos. The second one, that's the nerdy one, is a cool kind of engraving style drawing of the shards of Narsil from the Lord of the Rings, because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings nut. And the shards of Narsil, if you are not a Lord of the Rings nut and not a nerd like myself, are the broken pieces of a sword that become Andúril, the Flame of the West, Aragorn's sword, or Elessar when he becomes the king. Where did the number 13 come from? Well, I'll tell you. You're here, I'm here. I might as well tell you after I save. Control S. The number 13 came from when I originally did my very first Tally-Ho deck, which is the blue and orange one that a lot of people call the turtle back, because the back design kind of looks like a turtle. That's what they say. The original Tally-Hos, or a lot of original playing cards, would have a number on them. And the number, not always, but the number would a lot of times denote which court card set they were, or which number of deck it was in the production. So, for an example, for like United States Playing Card Company or Russell Morgan, the Tigers, their very first deck that they produced was called the Tigers 101. And it was kind of like a way that they, differentiated which deck came first. So they had the Tigers 101, then they would have a 202 something, and then they had a 303. And what you know of as the bicycle rider back, that whole term, the 808s, that came from the bicycle rider back, was the number 808 in that series. And so the 808 number came from the number that Russell and Morgan used to denote where that rider back came in the chronologically in the line of production. And so when I originally did the first Tally-Ho deck, the Tally-Ho the very, the iconic Tally Ho design that everybody knows and loves. It had number 9 on the tuck box in the bottom right hand corner. I did not want to, copy the number 9 because I wanted to be, I wanted my Tally Hos to be unique to me. And so I picked the number 13 because I like the number 13. It's not, I don't say it's my lucky number because I don't really believe in luck. But I like it. For some reason, I like it. And so I chose it. I need to do this. I can't forget to do this with the berries. And so I put number 13 as my number in place of the number 9. And it just kind of stuck, and it kind of ended up becoming like a sub brand for sub branding for myself, to where, you got Stockholm number 17. I don't know why. I'm not sure the reasoning why Lorenzo does number 17. There could be something behind it. I'm sure there is, but anytime you see number 13, I kind of wanted to make it like a sub brand, to where anytime you see number 13, you think, in the playing card world at least, you think, okay, that's Kings Wild. What inspired your logo? You know what? Let's take a little trip. I'll show you what inspired my logo. If you go to my old website, onelunglewis.com, this is my old portfolio website when I was an illustrator and a game designer, a character artist or whatever. And these are some of the illustrations that I did when I was an illustrator. If you click on this character right here, his name is Tugsy. And I used to teach a character development class at a place called the Gnomon School of Visual Effects. And I taught youngsters how to develop computer game characters. So I would teach them how to digitally sculpt these characters and then paint the textures and build these game characters. And if you notice, he's got a skateboard right there. And this is Tugsy. It's a post-apocalyptic character where he rides a skateboard with a sawed-off shotgun and he kills zombies. And this is his skateboard right here. And I had to design a design for the skateboard. And so I designed this Kings Wild. I called it the Kings Wild. So I put a gas mask on this king. And then that became, as you can see right here, the skateboard design. And then when I did my original Kickstarter, before I'd ever thought about playing cards, I did this way before I even thought about playing cards. My first Kickstarter was of this shirt. I did a t-shirt Kickstarter of this head design with the sword going through his hand. And that's where the logo came from. And then when I did my first playing card Kickstarter and had some success, I realized that, I should probably incorporate so I could have a little bit better tax position with the old government. And so I created an LLC at the time, and I had to name it something. And my wife and I was like, hey, why don't you call it Kings Wild Project? Because Kings Wild is the head name, the name of that design that I called it, the original t-shirt that I did for the Kickstarter. And then we put project on the end of it just to signify that at the time, that it's not just playing cards that I'm going to do. It's, this whole thing is kind of like a journey, and like I knew I wanted to do different things than just playing cards. So I didn't want it to be Kings Wild Playing Card Company. So we called it Kings Wild Project, and the project kind of signifies that it's an ongoing pursuit to learn new things and to do new things and to create, just to really, in general, create, interesting products with my art. Control S. So that's where the logo came from. But those are good questions. That gives me something to talk about, man, instead of me just sitting here doing my thing while I'm drawing. So ask away. Ask away fun questions like that. Ask about me personally, what kind of food I like. I don't know. Do whatever you want. At least gives me something to talk about. See, now I don't have anything to talk about. I'm just quiet. Little berry there. Don't forget all of our nice little berries. How's the production of The Lord of the Rings going? Well, to be honest, I'm really, because of COVID and because of all the delays, I am really trying hard to get as far ahead as I can. But the main reason why I'm trying to get as far ahead as I can is so that I can free up time to do the Lord of the Rings stuff. I hope to launch the Lord of the Rings Kickstarter in May, I think, is when we'll do it. But I'm not really doing anything with it right now, just because I'm really focusing on putting all my efforts towards getting ahead for the shorts and all the decks that have a definite timeline attached to them. Because the subscriptions are definitely the bedrock of my business. So yeah, there's your answer. What do I do in besides art? Art, music, fishing, breakdancing. Well, to be honest, how do I answer this? I kind of have a pretty boring life outside of my art, because I love designing playing cards so much. I live and breathe. I live and breathe drawing, but it just happens to be that living and breathing is, I live and breathe drawing, and I guess you could say my tank of air or a tank of oxygen is playing cards. And I am the only thing that I am happier doing is, spending time with my family and my girls. So I really don't do much different. If I'm not drawing, first of all, if I'm not drawing, I'm thinking about when is the next time I'm going to be drawing, because I love it. But in terms of things that I like the outdoors, but I've always wanted to be kind of an outdoors person, but I just don't do it enough to where I could call myself an outdoorsman. I'm not a big hunter or anything like that, or a big fisherman. I like the outdoors, and I'll go hunting with people, but I don't seek it out. I like Legos. It's so nerdy, but I love Legos. I think it's the tactileness of the building that I like. I really like, if I had to say one thing, I would say if I'm not drawing, I'm either I love woodwork and I love metalwork. I'm actually going to, one of the things that I'm starting to do research on is I used to hand make tobacco pipes and make these really steampunkish tobacco pipes. Let me see if I got a picture of one here. I don't know if I've got a picture of those or not. Let's see. I have an old Instagram account. Let's see here. That I never did really do anything with. Let's see. Here it is. Called Jackson Fine Pipes. But they're kind of like these steampunkish pipes where I would machine these brass fittings. I would machine these brass fittings and then make all the pipe work stuff. I didn't do it very long. It was just an interesting little hobby that I did. Look at this one. It's ridiculous. Look how big this pipe is. What ridiculousness is that? But the pipe thing was short-lived for me because I have one lung and asthma. And smoking a pipe is just not a good thing for me. So I started, but I really enjoyed the metalworking aspect of it, machining the parts, hand machining the parts on a lathe, that kind of thing. I really loved that aspect because it was, because that whole, the Bible verse that's on all my decks, the work with your hands and mind your own business, I love that. And I love learning new things. And that was a huge thing that I really liked was, working with my hands and learning those new things about machining stuff. With that said, I love swords and I love knife making. I've made a few knives, a few fixed blades knives, but I think me making knives was just me scratching at an itch of me really wanting to hand make swords. And so I'm wanting to get into swordsmithing. It's been kind of hard with COVID because, I've been searching for, local swordsmiths or knife makers that I can take classes from. I can learn everything on YouTube. I basically have learned everything that I know professionally from tutorial videos. I learned it a lot. I learned it before YouTube was really a thing, from tutorial videos and stuff like that. But I'm going to get into swordsmithing, and I want to start making swords. However, I will say this. I have to mention this. I love writing. I love writing, and I actually, probably a decade ago, started writing a fantasy story called The Way of Hammer and Steel. And it kind of spawned out of my love of swords and blades and stuff like that. But it also kind of, was inspired by, Lord of the Rings and those kind of things. But it's a story called The Way of Hammer and Steel. And it kind of, the protagonist is a character named Merrick, who starts out as a little boy. And his dad is a master bladesmith. But I started that about 10 years ago, and I've been kind of working on it off and on. And I've got about 16 chapters written. I love doing it, and it's just kind of one of those things that I do on my spare time, but I would love to. When I started originally, I was doing something very similar to what I'm doing now, is because it wasn't my normal gig and it wasn't how I made money. I would get up really early and try to carve out, an hour or so every day to be able to write. And hopefully, I'd like to start it back up again now that I'm kind of settled and we have a home now and we're kind of settled here in Tennessee. So I hope to do that. But I think it's a fun story. It's, it's got a deep lore and all that kind of stuff. Just because I was inspired by Lord of the Rings. It's kind of my own mythology that I created, my own creation story, my own backstories, all that kind of stuff. I love doing that kind of stuff. Can I speak to, let's see here. Griffin, you're filling me, man. One of the reasons why I want to get into swordsmithing is because when I do my Lord of the Rings project, and I've already reached out to a few sword makers, but I really haven't heard back from anybody. There's probably who's this jackknob that's the playing card designer? But, I'm going to design all of my own swords, so like Andriel, the Flame of the West, Glamdrin, Gandalf's sword. Here's me nerding out about knowing all the names of the swords. You got Sting, that's Bilbo and Frodo's sword. I'm going to be designing all of my own swords for the Lord of the Rings project, and I would love to be able to make, especially Andriel, because that's my favorite That's my favorite sword of all time. Because that's it, man. That's the sword of the king. Narsil becoming Anduril. I would love to be able to, design them and then eventually get to a point to where I can make my own swords, my own Lord of the Rings swords. Because let's be honest, who wouldn't want to see handmade Lord of the Rings swords for sale on the King's Wild website? Now, I would love to, like you said, it would be awesome if I could find out, figure out some like production thing that I could have somebody produce them, but I feel like that would be horribly expensive to do. And I don't know. I don't feel like I've got the following to warrant making a production run of swords that are at least not, I could find a cheap way to make swords, but it would be crappy, super crappy swords. And the swords that I have behind me are the movie replicas, and they're pretty good quality. They're made by United Cutlery. They're not like museum quality at any means, but I like them a lot. They're interesting. They're good inspiration to have. But they're Glamdrin and Anduril from Lord of the Rings. I'd like to get Boromir's sword and Sting. Yeah, no, I love Forged in Fire. There was a guy in Austin I met while I lived in Austin that was on Forged in Fire. Super nice guy. His last name was Hughes. I can't remember. I can't remember his first name, but he owns Hughes Knives, and he was really nice. And he made like these really cool knives that had Control S. He made some of these knives that had he made a set of 4 knives with really nice Damascus steel blades that he forged himself. And in the pommels of all the knives were like a club, a spade, a heart, and a diamond. And I gave him some cards, some Federal 52. I think it was a 2 or 3 Federal 52 cards. I can show you. We're here. We're on a trip. See, I love you guys talking to me and asking me questions because it just sends me on all these tangents. Let me see here. What's his name? Hughes. There it is. Hughes Knives. James Hughes. Let's see here. That's a shamrock. Let me see. I want to find this set that he made. Here it is. See? Look at this. So in the pommels of all these knives, there's a club, a heart, a spade, a diamond. Then he made these handmade leather sheaths, and I gave him a little, a King's Wild coin and a legal tender deck that has a spot in the handmade box. Look at that. See, look at the box. It's got the diamonds, the hearts, and stuff on it. Super cool. There's the diamond. See, clubs, hearts. And then he had somebody engrave. So, cool inspiration. I like it. But he was really nice. And he does some classes in Austin. And if I ever go back to Austin, I've already talked to him. He said he'd be happy to do some, basic forging classes, blacksmithing classes. You want to see one of the knives? I'll show you 2 of the knives. Hold on a second. I'll show you some of the knives that I made. So I'll turn on the light so you can see it. So this was one of the first knives that I made, and I did the leather work as well. Right here. Just this small knife right here. Turn this light on too. Small knife right there. It's got a black walnut handle. It's a really thick blade. It's a 1/4 of an inch thick. I don't know if you can see it, but I also I hand engraved that little scroll work on it on both sides on the blade. And then I made this little sheath for it. And this is another knife I made. I haven't really taken care of this because it's rusted a little bit because it's not stainless steel. But it's like a little kitchen knife. That I made. Really sleek kind of handle. You can see right there. It's got my old signature on it. Jackson. But it's kind of, it's old and rusted. But it's still super sharp, that's for sure. All right. Back to designing. All right. Let's go back. Control S. Let me just go back and check. I'm looking for the berries that I haven't done yet. But I thought knives, I started doing knives because I thought they were a nice alternative, a more healthy alternative for myself with having asthma in one lung than me making pipes because there's no reason for me to be smoking anything, even if I like it. Even though I love smoking a pipe, there's no reason for me to be doing it. So knives were a nice alternative. And the knives just kind of led me into swords because why not? I just like the rawness of it, of blacksmithing and forging, of just like you take this hot piece of metal and you pound steel on it, and you make it into something. Like it's like the most rudimentary, I can't even say it, rudimentary, whatever, you know the word, form of creation, I think. Besides like clay work or something. Speaking of clay work, I'm supposed to have our new Deanan Pottery Kingswald coffee mugs delivered in the next few days. Super excited about that. Been waiting a while. We were supposed to get them for the holidays, but they were behind because of COVID. Oh, gosh, because of COVID. They were behind and we weren't able to get them for the holidays. But we had 5 different designs, like shapes of mugs and colors made. So I'm super excited about getting those. What are the questions you have? Keep asking me good questions, peeps. Helps me talk. Helps me get through this stuff and not just sitting here. Let me just see. Just taking a peek. It's coming together. Looking good. Take a drink. Has there been Kingswald Project beanies? No, there have not. But maybe for next year we'll do that. And some koozies. Yeah. Some Kingswald koozies. I have been wanting to make, I'm a big whiskey drinker and bourbon drinker, scotch. I have been wanting to make some Kingswald Glencairn glasses. Glencairn is just a type of glass that a lot of people that drink whiskey are, it's the bougie glass to drink whiskey out of. Okay, so I've done, let me just check, Control S while I'm here. I'm just going to check to see if I've done all the leaves. Okay. Yes. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and make it looks like I'm not going to be able to even reuse these big flowers just because of the space I've got to work with. So what I'm going to do now is it's a good question. Kenny Diaz asks, how did you learn so much about the history of playing cards? Well, I'm going to tell you, first of all, just like with anything else, I love doing research. I collect playing cards, but I collect antique playing cards. I don't really collect modern playing cards. I really don't even follow the modern playing card world that much. The best place to start, especially with, I should make a Amazon affiliate referral code to this, but let me see if it's on Amazon. I think the best place to start is a thing called the I'm a horrible speller. Hockman's Guide to Playing Cards. See if they got it on Amazon. Nope. What is all this stuff? Let me just search it. Hockman's Guide to Playing Cards. There it is. Let's see. Here it is right here. This book right here is a wealth of knowledge. Well, this is the price guide. There's another one that's the blue. That's just the regular one. I know that Conjuring Arts, let's see, 52 plus Joker is definitely the other human aspect of me learning. Tom and Judy Dawson, who they were the presidents of the club, were, they're the authors of the Hockman's Guide. They're not the authors. They are the what is it? The editors of the new version. So, however, Conjuring Arts, AskAlexander.org, they have a digital version of it. Let me see if I can get to it. I can't spell it, but they have a digital version of this Hockman's Guide, and it is a great resource if you're wanting to learn about playing cards. And I'll show you I have an older version of it. This is an older version that was given to me as a gift from the Dawsons themselves. This is a very old version, but at the time it was called the Encyclopedia of Playing Cards. And then there is another. This is the same thing, the Encyclopedia of Playing Cards, Part 2. And the cool thing about this is it's mainly for old decks, and the newer version is. Do I have a newer version? I can't see. The newer version is much better laid out. This is a relic, very much a relic. But the new version has what it'll have. I mean, this one looks awful. I mean, in terms of the layout, it'll have a back design and an ace of spades and a joker, and then it'll give you a paragraph of what that is, when it was made, who it was made. And the new one is, I want to see if I've got one. But if you go to Ask Alexander or Conjuring Arts, they have a really great, and you might be able to access it. Let me copy this name. Let me go to Ask Alexander, because I misspelled it. I thought I copied it. Let's see here. Copy. Here we go. Well, this is the this is Ask Alexander. And if you're not a member of Ask Alexander, they have a ton of stuff in terms of like downloadable books that have been scanned and stuff like that are great. It's a great library. Let me see. I'm not showing my screen. This is the askalexander.com .org. But I don't see it. But I know that they have a downloadable version. Let's see. I'm not going to spend that much longer on this. Let's see if we've got Hockman. I don't think so. But there's a downloadable version of it, which is a great place to start to learn a lot about they have everything, every manufacturer. Also, the website World of Playing Cards? World of Playing Cards. This wopc.uk. .co.uk. This is an awesome website. They have tons of stuff. You can go through, manufacturers. You can go search by manufacturers. And click on it, and they have scans and stuff like that. Incredible resource, and they'll usually have information about it. And that is, I'll put the URL in the chat. Great resource. All right, back to drawing. But keep asking me good questions. I love it. All right, what was I doing? What am I doing? Am I drawing still? What part am I working on here? I forgot. Oh, yes. I was going to do the flowers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to erase this just because I want to put the bud right in the middle. Noob question, can I suggest a beginner software for designers? You know what? I think the best beginner software is Photoshop, and the best software for pros is Photoshop or Illustrator. Now, if you can't afford Photoshop, you could try GIMP. GIMP is kind of a free version of Photoshop, but I don't think there's anything better, especially if you're going to do it professionally, even for noobs or the seasoned pro. I don't think there's better. I'm just going to put 3 prongs on these really small ones because these are minute. Thicken up this base a little bit. Sharpen up these edges. And I'll fit as many. I don't know. I may not be able to do that many. I may have to do it kind of like it's not. The flower hasn't opened up yet on some of these because of just space. Joel asked, did I go to art school? The technical answer is yes. I did go to art school. I went to a state school called the University of North Texas, and I majored in drawing and painting. Now, with that said, my 6-year career for my bachelor's degree of fine arts at the Fine University of North Texas. Hope my parents aren't listening, but it was a complete, utter waste of my time. Uh, it was a very progressive, and I'm not saying progressive as in political progressive. I'm saying progressive as in a terms of artistic theory and stuff like that. It was a very progressive school, like basically all of the art schools, really, especially at universities. It was very progressive. I was an illustrator. I'm an illustrator at heart. I like to tell stories with my pictures, and I like to illustrate stories that I love with my pictures. And illustration was very frowned upon. They wanted everybody to be, modern artists, uh, modern artists and stuff like that. So, Joel, I would have to completely disagree with you. I do not think they have an amazing program. I think they have a horrible program. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I think they have a horrible program because all they're doing is producing, and I think this is very similar to many, many universities. All they're doing is reproducing bad copies of the professors, and they're not. At least this was what it was, my experience at the University of North Texas. And from the stuff that I've seen, it's very similar to everywhere else. They look down upon illustration. Anytime I did anything illustrative, I wouldn't get good grades, and I just got really got sick of it. And so I just fine. I was like, I'll start doing what you people want just so I can get out of here. And it was so sad for me because I would just do these stupid paintings and drawings, like this equation of what they wanted, of these, very expressionistic, abstract paintings, all this other kind of crap and stuff like that. They have an incredible, yes, Joel, I thought you said art program. They have an amazing music program. That is no doubt for sure. They've got one of the best jazz programs in the country. So, sorry for that. I thought you were talking about their art program. And so I just started doing what they wanted and making these, what in my head were just these stupid, mindless, abstract paintings that didn't have any inspiration for myself. And the sad part is I started getting good grades. And so I was like, yep, this is worthless. And so I just got out. And so if you're an artist, if you are an artist that wants to be a professional artist, if I have any advice for you, the first advice that I would give you is absolutely 100% do not go to college. Because I even remember when I was a art director for a game studio. I mean, I never once looked at a college degree, a diploma, or anything like that, ever once. I just looked at people's portfolios. I mean, it could have been a 12-year-old. If they had a great portfolio, you're in. That's all there was to it. But that's my own. That's my own jaded opinion on that. Take it how you will. But good question. Gave me something to talk about. Or soapbox about, I guess, in that sense. Turn my smoothing on just a little bit. All right, who's got the next question? Ask away. What do you want to know? Control S. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Kenny. Thank you. Wait, I was doing the flower buds. I was getting off track. I'm going to add some flair here. Let's do more of the flower buds. Let's do a different angle. Maybe let's do like a side angle. What's my favorite deck of cards I've designed? I would have to say it's probably either Legal Tender or the Arthurian, but I really like Robin Hood as well. I had a blast. Doing Robin Hood. I had a blast doing Beowulf. Have I looked into, let's see. Have I looked into the history of card magic? No. I'm not really. Not really. I like magic, and I like just the history of all that kind of stuff, just because it, is is connected with playing cards, but not really. I haven't really looked into it that much. Do I plan on doing an Alice in Wonderland deck? Yes, I do plan on doing an Alice in Wonderland deck. I do. Jungle Book. I like Jungle Book. Jungle Book is not on my schedule. I'm pretty sure Jungle Book. I think Jungle Book and Jumanji are both. I don't know about Jumanji. I think Jungle Book and Jumanji are both public domain stories. I know Jungle Book is, but you gotta stay away from the old Disney with the Jungle Book, and also Peter Pan, which I'm going to be doing a Peter Pan deck. Are you into comics like DC or Marvel? I was more when I was a kid, for sure. Um, I grew up on watching Saturday mornings, Uncanny X-Men. Um, I liked Superman comics when I was a kid because I grew up late '80s, early '90s, and so I went through that whole era of Superman dying and that kind of thing, and but yes, I like comics. I've done tons and tons. If you look at that website, my old website, I did tons of old Galactic Hero and Marvel Comics illustrations. Like there's Doctor Doom from the superhero squads. Did lots of Marvel stuff. There's Beast. Well, that's Puma, not Beast. There's Sandman. Well, there's Doctor Strange. Not Doctor Strange. Mysterio. I can't even get them right. Get the names right. I did some Spider-Man stuff. So I got to do a lot of Marvel stuff. So I like those kind of comics and stuff. Control S. Do 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 do. Okay, I'm just checking. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, let's put a bud over here. Turn my smoothing on a little bit. You know what? I'm going to go back to the way it was because it's going to give me a little bit more room. Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate that. I like Frank Miller. I like his comics a lot. I like his kind of gritty style for sure. His drawing style. I like Seth MacFarlane stuff. What video games did I work on? I didn't work on that many because I wasn't in the video game industry very long. But the ones that I did work on was a game called Sorcery, and it was right about the time where the PlayStation Move was coming out, and we were like one of the flagship PlayStation Move games, and it was like kind of a cross between Harry Potter and the Book of the Kells. It's kind of a Celtic wizard type story. And then I briefly worked on, what was it called? I can't remember what it's called. But it was the guy that did Resident Evil. I can't remember. But it was like a scary. The enemy within. No, the darkness within. Something like that. I can't remember. It's lame. It's a big kind of like scary horror game. I love video games, but I didn't like the video game industry that much. Working in it. I used to play a lot of video games. The Evil Within, that's it. That's what it was. I did some of the initial like digital sculpting for the lead character, doing his face stuff, designing his face, and sculpting his face, that kind of thing. And we mainly worked on it was right before like Xbox One, the next gen, like Xbox One and the new PlayStation were coming out. The stuff with like the newer processors and stuff. This was years ago. I'm talking like it's 2012-ish. And so we didn't work on the main game, but we worked on, our studio was in charge. We were doing like I guess you could call the up-resing of the Xbox 360 game, and we were doing all the artwork and up-resing for it to be on the next gen consoles. I used to play a lot of video games. I love Assassin's Creed. Oh, it's my jam. Love Skyrim. But I haven't played video games in like a decade, probably. Well, more than that. Less than that. Because just I couldn't justify the amount of time that they suck from your life. See, is there any way there will be more slots open for the Gilded subscription 2021? Yes. We sold out of the Gilded slots pretty quickly. We will be opening up more slots just because of the demand. But it won't be for January. It most likely will be for February. And the only reason why we're not doing it for January is because we've already placed our production run orders, and we don't really have enough. We don't have enough decks really to make enough to add 50 or 50 slots or whatever. So we'll just have to wait till February. February and so on, yes. That's the idea. I'm excited as well for you, Kenny. Hope you guys are enjoying these Dawn's early lights. I am. It's really helping motivate me and helping me get a lot of work done. No, they will not finish. I would love to be able to just continue these. I probably won't be able to do the Dawn's early lights for like Lord of the Rings only because of my license. I kind of have to have everything approved before I publicize it, I guess, or put it out there for view. So I most likely will not be able to do the Control S. I won't be able to do the Lord of the Rings in this manner, just because it's kind of against my license to show the process. That doesn't mean I can't. That doesn't mean I won't do like time lapses and record myself, and then after the fact, once everything's approved, then I can kind of show some of those time lapses. But it won't be a thing where it's alive like this. Let's make another one of those closed ones. Yeah, I like these too. I like this. I like the live streams as well because it keeps my mind working because, I get to talk. I get to talk to you guys. It's a little bit slower, but that's okay. I think it's, just from a content standpoint, it's a good way to create a bunch of content that's relatively production work light, because basically all I have to do is push a red button, and that's all. And then just do my normal thing, and I got content. So I kind of like that aspect of it. Control S. Let me fill my coffee up. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Let's see. What is the most difficult aspect to design while making a deck of cards, or does that vary from deck to deck? It does vary from deck to deck. Definitely does, because different decks have different, complexities. Um, but you know what? Honestly, for me, the hardest thing for me is what I call the between project depression. And what that is like when I have, been working on a deck, for 2 or 3 weeks, and or however long it takes, and my mind has been in that style mode, and I've created a process of doing that style, and I've created a process of doing those characters, because so much of designing a deck of playing cards comes down to, the repeatability of a style, in the form of making multiple court cards feel unique, but at the same time feel different in this terms of the freshness and that kind of stuff. And so the hardest part for me is this thing I call the between project depression, which is, I've so much of my mind and focus has been focused on this specific style or a direction of a deck, that once I'm finished with it, I kind of go through this exhausted depression phase where, I rethink my life, and because I'll try to start a new project, I'll try to start a new deck, a new theme, and I'll always struggle with trying to find the style or the look. And I did that with Wizard of Oz a lot as well. And I go through this kind of depression of like, oh, I suck. I can't do this. I can't whatever. But I finally do it. I did that a lot with Wizard of Oz, and I think that especially this Dawn's Early Light thing, it really kind of forced me. It was in more ways than one. It was just an exercise to get myself going. Where it's basically kind of like, I've kind of got to force myself to do this kind of a thing. But once I find it, and once I kind of, throw stuff against the wall and it sticks and I like it, I like a style. And also, once I find the style, then I can develop the process of duplicating that style across an entire deck to give it a cohesive feel. Once I kind of get past that first barrier, like I am now with this deck, then I can kind of really put it on cruise control and then really start just pumping it out. And that's the fun part. The actual art of it, the actual art is, it's hard and I got to concentrate, but it's, I've done it so much and I have so much practice doing it, that the art part is really not that hard for me. It's the ideas and the concepts and getting a direction that's the hard part for me, I think. Hope that answered your question. Control S. Kind of bouncing back and forth, doing these triple little dots, lines in the leaves. If you're on the Photoshop website, I use Photoshop and Illustrator. You can, they're kind of like an online subscription thing. It's not so much where you buy the software anymore. You can subscribe and pay for, Photoshop by itself. Or you can get what they call the Creative Cloud subscription, which basically gives you access to all of their software, all of the Adobe software. They may have some kind of like designer artist bundle that's just Photoshop and Illustrator. I do not know. But I would say if you're more of a traditional artist in the sense where you love to draw, you love to illustrate, that kind of thing, I would say, and you can only afford one, well, I'd first say get GIMP because it's free, and it's a good way for you to start out. It's a good way to start out, just getting your feet wet with digital painting. But if you can afford Photoshop, definitely get Photoshop. And I would say if you're more of kind of a traditional artist that you love to draw, you like to illustrate, those kind of things, I would say go with Photoshop because it's going to give you a little bit more freedom to be able to illustrate the way you want, as opposed to Illustrator, which is kind of counterintuitive because the name. And if you're more of kind of a designer, and granted, these are all my own opinions, so take it with a grain of salt. If you're more of a designer and not an illustrator, not a more traditional artist, but you're more of a designer, go with Illustrator. It'll be more friendly to you and your leanings. What do I think about a deck on Norse mythology? Well, Beowulf was kind of that in a way, but I like Norse mythology. I like all the characters. I think it's definitely something that's been done a lot already. I would, if an idea and concept that's fresh and new and different than what's already out there comes along, same with like pirates, that's definitely something that I want to do. And that's definitely something that, so yeah. You can get Nate says you can get a student package for $20, includes everything. Kids in elementary school, gonna work on that. Yeah. I started doing not Photoshop, but it was like Painter, like when I was in junior high. And when I was in elementary school, they really didn't have Photoshop at the time. But my kids are using it now. My daughter uses it. I tell my daughter, Claire, my oldest, she wants to be, she's a pretty good artist. She's way better than I was at her age. She also my parents were public school teachers, and so they weren't really artistic. But they were very supportive of my art endeavors. But Claire has, the advantage of having me, a professional artist, be there and help her. So she's definitely she's on a much faster track than I was. But I already have Claire working in Photoshop, and she really likes it. So yeah, you can't start, especially for art. The sooner you can, like if you have kids or if you are a person that's pretty young, the sooner you start doing it, the better. And the better off and more ahead you're going to be than other people. And I think that's one of the big reasons why I think college is such a waste of time for somebody that wants to be an artist, because it's basically going to be 4 years of you wasting your time when you could be actually learning things depending on your profession. It's going to be, you could learn things and not accruing student debt, because usually art schools are really expensive, and you're not going to, in 9 times out of 10, you're not going to get a job that's going to be able to pay that stupid student loan back. These are all things that I've learned from experience. Oh, yeah. You can try to use your school info to get a discount. Totally. Do that. We homeschool. I could totally get a discount for Photoshop for my kids, but they have Photoshop. But don't use it for commercial use, obviously. You know what I'm just now realizing? I've been doing, on all of these leaves, I've been doing the triple line when I only did the triple line on the buds, when originally I was only doing a one large single one. Oh, crap. I'll probably have to go back and fix that just because these are a lot really small. But that's okay. I won't do it now. Control S. But I'll do it from here on out. I can't believe nobody noticed that. The obsessive compulsive in me noticed. I was like, what are you doing, Robinson? And selfishly, this will make it a lot easier because I only have to do one of these things. Have I witnessed the gilding process? I have gone through the gilding process myself. So yes, I have witnessed it. It is a foil. Gold leaf is exactly what it is. Gold leaf. And I say gold leaf as in the color gold. You can buy actual real, gold leaf that's made from gold. But usually, the stuff that most people use for their gilding playing cards and stuff is just a manufactured gold leaf foiling. So basically, the process of gilding is you clamp down the cards or book or whatever you're gilding. You clamp it down in a vise type thing, and then you sand the edges. So you prep the edges. You prep the edges of whatever you're gilding, and then you apply what is called sizing. Usually a brush of some sort, and sizing is basically glue, and the sizing is what then you take the sheet of foil or leaf, gold leaf, or whatever color you're using, and then you place it on the surface, and then wherever that sizing is, the glue, it adheres to the foiling, and sometimes most modern foiling process involve heat of some sort, and that's what activates the sizing. And so you have a hot roller that you then roll over the edge or roll over the surface of your gilding, and then it adheres, whatever the word is, adheses the sizing to the foil, and then you brush off the parts that were not in there and get rid of the excess. And then you do what's called burnishing, which is basically taking a smooth metal object and rubbing it on the surface of the foil. And what the burnishing does is it gives it kind of like that mirrored reflective finish. Gilding is a very expensive process. I'm speaking from like a card manufacturing standpoint, and that's one of the things that that's definitely something we've been talking about. Just as a purchase, is purchasing a legit gilding machine. I mean, it's basically a glorified sander and heat applier. But it's a very expensive piece of machinery, but at the same time, we spend a lot of money that we give to other companies to gild our playing cards. I mean, we spend more on the gilding of playing cards than we do on the actual production of the playing cards that we're gilding. That's just the nature of the beast, though. Thank you, John DeO. I appreciate those kind words. Let me go back and fix some of this riffraff. Let me go and fix this. Sorry, people. I got to do this. My obsessive compulsive is like, you got to go back and fix these. Is that why the gilding versions are so expensive? Yes, mainly. That's why they're so expensive. They're also more expensive, and this is a longer conversation that people have different opinions on, but they're also more expensive just because we make less of them, and the demand is higher. But it's a combination of the supply and demand coupled with the fact that the production cost is astronomically higher. Do y'all want to talk about playing cards? Do y'all want to talk about more of my design process? I like this conversation that we're having. It's nice. Just go back and beef up these little elements. This will be good, though. I'm glad I'm fixing this because those, especially the areas that are going to be foiled, those very tiny details could very easily get lost in the foiling, and the foiling plate not be able to do it. Is it easy to make mistakes gilding? Yes, it is. Anytime we gild, it's another reason why it's expensive, because not only is it expensive to do it per deck, but it's also expensive because they also, if you send, say, 100 decks to get gilded, you may get 75 back that are actually gilded, because there'll be wastage, lots of wastage, because they'll screw up on the other 25. And so not only are you paying a premium for the gilding process itself, you're also paying a premium just because you have to trash, X number of decks every time when you're gilding. And at least here in the States, the law of diminishing return, or what is it, volume of scale, economy of scale, doesn't really apply to gilding because, it's basically the same price to gild 100 decks as it is to gild 10,000 decks. You said you collect, let me go back, cardstock story history. I'm not sure what that question means, Griffin. If you'd like to clarify, I'd be happy to try to answer it. And while you're thinking, you said you collect antique cards. Why do you get them from? Who do you get them from, and which is your favorite? I think with any playing card collector, you'll see this a lot with new playing card collectors. They'll come into the hobby, and they'll just have this mentality of like, well, I'm a playing card collector, so I just have to collect everything, all playing cards, which it's totally fine. It's a great way to get it's a way to get educated quickly in playing cards, but it gets expensive really quick. And what I kind of encourage people to do as they kind of become, a little more matured in their, and I'm saying matured in the sense of they've just been collecting longer. What I encourage people to do is to pick a focus of your collection. Like, oh, I'm only going to collect bicycle decks. Oh, I'm only going to collect decks of cards that are about Norse mythology. Or I'm only going to collect cards that have a cat riding a bicycle or whatever. I encourage people to pick a focus of their collection. And what that does is it makes, number one, it decreases the amount of decks that you're going to have to buy. So it makes it a little bit more financially, feasible, or a little bit better. But it puts kind of like a game aspect to it, to where it gives you this hunt and find aspect to it. To where, okay, I'm going to pick, like for me, I collect antique decks. Now I have two or three focuses in my own playing card collection. I like old Steamboat decks. And even within old Steamboat decks, I even search for specific Steamboat decks with specific style jokers. So that's one kind of focus of my own collection. And so it really kind of narrows the amount of decks that I have to buy. And then it also narrows that even further, because then I'm only looking for a specific type of antique Steamboat deck that has a specific type of joker or whatever, that kind of thing. And that can be, translated to anything. And then on top of that, I will occasionally, honestly don't buy that many cards. I might buy 2 or 3 decks a year, but those 2 or 3 decks that I'm buying are going to be antique decks that I've been searching for that, that might be expensive. But it also, narrowing the focus gives me that kind of hunt and find aspect that I think is entertaining as well. And it keeps it interesting and fresh for myself. And if anything, of course I'm going to plug, you should focus your collection and just collect King's Wild decks. And then the game is, okay, can I collect all of them or whatever? But I'm just using that as a sarcastic example. But I think that's a good thing to look at if you're a new in playing card collection, is to, the sooner the better. When you find something that you like, or you find a specific trait that you're interested in, or something that captures your attention, that inspires you, just focus your collection and go after that, and it'll make it a whole lot more enjoyable. Especially, that'll make it more interesting. You know, I see what you mean, Joel, in terms of like you like the surprise, but you have to look at it like this, like you as a subscriber to the shorts, that's like, that could be your focus. Like that is your, that if that's the only thing that you do, that could be your focus. The focus of your collection is, okay, I want to collect all of Jackson's Kingswild Shorts decks. And that could be your focus. And so even though that the themes are different, you have quantified what you're looking for and what your focus is going to be. You know, maybe I only collect decks that come out in March, or maybe I only collect decks that are green. You know, in that way, that way you can have a variety of artists, but because you've focused on this, and it also is a good way to, it's a great way to create a deeper, I don't want to say conversation starter, but that's a really good way to think about it. It's a good way to create more depth and thought process behind a collection. Is like if you're talking to another collector, you're talking to another collector and they go, well, I collect everything. I just buy everything, which is fine. And maybe maybe buying everything is your focus. But it could be like you're talking to another playing card collector and you say, yeah, I only collect decks that are blue. And if it's got blue, I'm going to find it and I'm going to buy it. I think it creates an interesting conversation point for when you're talking to other collectors, because then you may, in your pursuit of finding all the decks that are out there that are blue, you may have come across something that the normal deck collector doesn't even know about. And there's so many new playing card collectors that go for the old, I'll get everything Theory 11 comes out with, or Illusionist and stuff like that. And that's the only kind of world, and they just kind of stick in this kind of like, here are the modern playing card designers, companies, and they just like, that's all they kind of see, because they think that that's all there is. And sadly, they also think that that's kind of the bar of, the bar of excellence in terms of playing card design, when they are missing a huge world of playing cards that have been designed. And I'm not saying that you have to be an antique playing card collector, but there are so many decks of cards that have been designed for hundreds of years, 50 years, hundreds of years, that have even been thought of yet. And there's so much stuff that's out there. Control S. What is boring? What's boring? Are you saying I'm boring? I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but like cellophane. I hate cellophane, because I work so hard to create these, what I consider works of art, that for the most part, a lot of what I find inspiration in are these old stories and such. Then I slap some plastic on it. I hate cellophane. I'd like to come up with, they used to put wax paper on stuff, and I'd like to come up, I want to come up with, a way to do it at scale. What was I doing? Oh yeah, I'm doing the buds. I want to come up with a way that I can do it at scale with like a wax paper covering or something like that. But I guess the good thing about cellophane is that you can still see the deck inside, and that's a good thing. Good questions. What else? I feel like I'm really quiet. How and where do I store my collection? I have a single bookshelf just to the right of me that I store my collection on. Most of them are just sitting there in the cellophane or just sitting on the shelf. Some of the more valuable ones, I guess you could say, I have in DS1 cases. Those cassette cassette tape, those are really good too. I like those. I think Theory 11 has its place in playing cards. As an artist, I think that, from a business standpoint, they do an incredible job with marketing and advertising, which, that's a big part of it. I think that they definitely have a recipe for their decks of cards. Their tuck cases are beautiful, no doubt, but over the years, I just have found that their tuck cases have just, while they're beautiful, they're just really boring because they're all really the same. And then there's been a few outliers, I think, over the years. But I think something that, granted, these are all my own opinions, so whatever. They're my own opinions. But I think as an artist, and this could be the illustrator in me talking, but what I strive to do is create a bunch of different styles and themes to where if you take someone that is completely uneducated in playing cards, doesn't know brands, doesn't know companies, doesn't know artists, if you take a bunch of decks, say my goal is that if you take someone that's uneducated about playing cards and you put all my decks in front of them, I want them to say, wow, these are all really beautiful decks and well executed and look beautiful. But I don't want them to feel like they came from the same person or the same artist. And with Theory 11, I think that is very, very true. And for me, in my own opinion, I think that's a weakness in it. But I'm coming at it from an artistic standpoint, for sure. Like 9 times out of 10, and I'm not going to make a completely generalized statement because there are outliers, for sure. But 9 times out of 10, you put a bunch of decks of cards in front of someone that's uneducated that are all Theory 11 decks, and you're going to get, these feel like they came from the same place. And, some people may view that as a good thing, and that's totally, totally cool. But I think that that's a weakness. And I think that their biggest weakness, once again, there are outliers. I think that coupled with the fact that most of the time so much of what people get captivated by, you can have a beautiful design and you can have a beautiful tuck case. But if you don't tell a story, in which somebody can latch onto and connect with, even though it's something that's beautiful, it's not going to have staying power. And when I mean staying power, Control S, what I mean by staying power is simply, it's just going to be a beautiful thing that is very ephemeral, that comes and goes in a way. But unless you have a story, unless you tell a story that people can connect to, I think that's really how you achieve a staying power or a way to connect with people on a deeper level. And it's that connection that you get that creates lasting customers, lasting followers. you know, and I think that that's where they kind of fall really flat is they don't tell stories. And a lot of that comes with the fact that they have these beautiful tuck cases. Then they have these very boring standard court cards for the most part. Now they've had unique court cards, and I think that those decks that they've created with those unique court cards have been their stronger court cards. And I think it's because when they do that, they connect with more people, and they tell a story. But that's just my own opinion. But you know what? It's kind of one of those things of like, you know, who you're talking to, because you may have somebody that their focus is, their focus of their collection is, standard. They could be a magician coming at it from a magician standpoint. So, but that's my own. What looks odd, Justin? Coming in here, talking smack. What I'm drawing right here is probably the size of a pinhead. Check. I wish I had more room to do these big flowers. I mean, I think knock is a little bit different. I actually give knock cards a little bit more leeway than I do Theory 11. Because knock is not trying to be something. Like knock is very transparent of what it is. And it's not like it's not like in this purgatory in between, like it's what it is. And there's people that may like that, and the way that knocks are, they may like that, what that is, and that aesthetic, and that's totally fine. And I think that it's definitely a different focus and a different market. But I give knock cards a lot more leeway than I do the Theory 11, because it's like you're losing I think with the beauty of Theory 11 tuck cases and stuff and the art that they can do, I think that they're just losing so much opportunity to tell really captivating stories. Of course, it's a little lumpy. It's supposed to be lumpy. It's supposed to look hand-drawn, but whatever. I actually, like I said, I give Knox a little more leeway. Because I don't think the Knox are missing opportunities to tell a story. Because the story is the deck itself. The simplicity of the deck. That is the story. A Star Wars deck, or whatever deck, especially a thematic deck that's based on some kind of literature or story. I mean, you got to tell that story in a way that's, a captivating way. Control S. Take a drink of coffee here. I'm just going to see if I can find any more. There's another place I could do a bud. I'm pretty close to being, like I'm about to be where I can start doing like the kind of like the finishing touches. On this. Of course you're giving me crap. It's what you do, Justin. It's what you do. I'm going back to sleep. Good night, sir. It was good to see you for a little bit. What led me to purchasing a container of cardstock? Two things. All the COVID manufacturing supply chain hiccups that were happening, and also the fact that I knew that the factory that was making making the specific playing card stock that I like and I use was going out of business. And I was like, well, crap. What's going to happen? So Bill Kalush and I at Expert Playing Card Company, we bought as much of the playing card stock as we could. So that's kind of what led me to do that. Let's put another one right here. Control S. What deck was mid-production when that went out? I would say this was, I think this was like August, maybe July, no, June, July or August was when that all kind of started happening. I mean, they probably went out of business way before that. It was just kind of a thing where the supply was coming to an end. And we were all given notice like, hey, after this date, you're not going to be able to buy this paper stock anymore. We're not going to carry it anymore, blah, 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 because the business is going out. And so we were like, well, how much can we buy? If someone makes a super tuck box design and makes a great back, why does someone like this give a classic deck pattern? I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure what you're saying there, buddy. If you could clarify that. All right, let's see here. If someone, okay, I can't wait. What time is it? 7:30? Speaking of Control Z, let's stop here. Let's just take a look at what we've done today. We've made a lot of good progress today, people. We've done it together. Yes, I got you. Well, Griffin, yes. Well, it wasn't mid manufacturing process of one of my decks. I'm printing so many decks that I have to, we have to order things in advance. And we have to plan ahead, okay, to make sure that we get things on time. We got to make sure that the factory has enough paper, and so we have to order paper in advance. And so it was just kind of during a project that, we got the warning that this paper stock was going out. And it just alerted us to say, okay, we need to buy as much of this as we can because I really like it. And so what we really wanted to do is we wanted to buy enough paper that we could print like all the Federal 52 decks for next year on the paper stock that I like, which is like, 15. I mean, it's like 50. Well, between August when it was happening and mid next year, I may print 150,000 decks of cards altogether, and we just wanted to get as much as we could before it dried up. All right, let's do this. I've saved that. Let's make a new. Document. Let's make a big one. Let's make it 12 inches. No, let's do 15 inches by 15 inches at 600 DPI. CMYK. Create. All right. let's just get this going here, people. Let's have some fun. All right, let's make the font bigger. What was I gonna do? I have one idea. Have I released a deck yet on this stock? Let's see. Do you ever get held up on details that people will never see due to the size of the final product? Yes, all the time. And that's a huge thing. That's kind of goes into that earlier conversation we were having about striving for perfection. Definitely do that. And I think that's something that you really have to guard yourself against as an artist. If someone makes a super tuck case, okay, I see what you mean, Sebastian. You're talking about the knock thing. Someone like this give a classic deck pattern. Let's see. Let me go back. Serendipity, Lucky Us. Have you released a deck yet on this stock? Yes. All of my most recent stuff, Legal Tenders, Robin Hood, Beowulf, all of those decks are on the stock that I'm talking about, that we've been talking about. Kenny, just see here. Kenny asks, are you releasing alternative versions aside from standard, limited, and gilded of the short subscriptions like you did with the Arthurian deck? Well, first of all, the Arthurian deck was not a subscription deck. So it doesn't really play by the same rules as the subscription decks go by. But with the subscription decks, the standard decks of what we... Because the whole reason behind, one of the reasonings behind the subscriptions in the first place was a way for me to try a lot of different ideas that necessarily weren't feasible or fit with Kickstarter. But then at the same time, the ones that were successful and the ones that we got a good response from, then I could print more of the standard decks that I could then move into my kind of like everyday inventory. Okay. Let me go back. All right. Let's see here. Let me see. 1 second. Let me just check something. All right. Let's do something a little bit different. We're going to work on this Control-Z thing. I'm going to open up Maya, which is a 3D program, just because it's fun and different. And I'm going to make 2 keyboard buttons. I'm going to make them in 3D, and then I'm going to bring them over, and I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw on them. Go away. Where'd you go? There you are. Man, I haven't been Maya in a while. Let's see here. Let's see here. Let's bring this up. Oh, yeah, by the way, I make sound effects when I do 3D, so bear with me. And this is pretty simple thing to do. How am I feeling? You know what, Kenny? First of all, thank you for asking. Let me tell you something. These Dawn's Early Lights are actually awesome because, you know, what I do, what you see me do during the Dawn's Early Lights, that's about a day's worth of work for me, at least just with my schedule. Now, I could work in the afternoon and at night, but these Dawn's Early Lights are actually great for me because I can really be focused and I get a lot more done because you guys are watching. And they're actually really good for me. And so it's, even though I'm getting up earlier, which I normally get up early anyways, you know, I haven't done 3D in a long time, so I'm remembering how to do it all. It's actually really good for me in terms of like rest and health because I, I get a full day's worth of work done in the morning before like 8 or 9 o'clock, very undistracted. And I mean distracted in terms of like my kids not distracting me. And then I'm basically done for the day. And then I can do other stuff like the other business stuff that's like go to my shop and get it ready, help my, work with my crew, getting them trained because I'm doing a lot of training right now with the new crew that's here in Cleveland, getting them all up and running, that kind of thing. So it's actually better for me in terms of my health and how I'm feeling and rest and stuff. So, but thank you for asking. I appreciate that. I'm going to smooth. Well, let me go ahead and let me project. Let's see. I can just make these the same object. Combine. Where'd you go? Combine. Edit mesh. Edit. I haven't used this in a long time. There it is. Combine. Let's open up our texture window. I wouldn't need to have a crew in New York. No, I'm sorry. But you can move to Cleveland and I'll hire you here. Let's do an automatic texture mapping. Let's find out where my tops are. Those are the tops. Okay. Let's go object mode, smooth. Okay. Now, let me save. Let's see here. Let's do snapshot UV sets. Where is it at? Snapshot, select, modify, create. Texture, image, UV snapshot. That's what we want. We're going to save this on the desktop because that's the best place to save anything. Key, Control Z. Okay, apply. Let's go to Photoshop. Let's open that up. Control Z. Make a new background. It can just be white. What were the tops? Close. Let me see these again. Okay, so it's it. Those ones over there. Let me look at my keyboard. What does this font look like? Okay. So we're going to do, we'll go Arial because that's probably pretty close to what it actually is. Make it black. So it's going to be CTRL. And the control is the bigger one of the two. Put it right there. Yeah, if you haven't seen the 24-hour live thing we did on Decking Around, bros, if y'all need to go there and watch it. It was so much fun. So much fun. Z. All right. Looks good. Turn that off. Save as a JPEG. Control C, diffuse. Control Z, diffuse. Yep. Go back into Maya. Let's go apply new material. We'll go a Lambert. And then material attributes, color, file. Then we'll stick in here Control D, diffuse. Hit 6, Boom. Got them right there. I need to go move this one here a wee bit. Oops. So I just need to move this one. These UVs here. Like that. Now, Control Z on a keyboard. Can I separate these? Yep. Control Z on a keyboard is not beside each other. It's kind of up like that, and then the shift button. So it's more like that. But I'm not going to go like this. I may just do it beside each other just so it's lined up. All right, so I've got my keyboards. That was a lot of work, but I just wanted to do it because I do this sometimes. And so what I'll do now is I'll go shading, wireframe. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I want 6. I want to do shading. Where is it at? Wireframe on shading. So now I can see the wireframe. Control Z is, oh yeah, what am I doing? This should be Control S. What the heck am I thinking, people? Should be Control S. Thanks. Doofus, I'm such a weirdo. Control Z. Yes. 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 Save. Go. Attributes. File. Reload. There we go. Control Z. Control S. I'm just gonna offset it. I'm just gonna keep it like this for right now. I'm gonna find me an angle that I like right there. I'm gonna smooth these one more time to get some more lines. Mesh, smooth. Do it again. Smooth. Okay. So I'm gonna take this. Let's see. Can I select? I was so scared for a second. Yeah, it does get the sense. So I'm going to take this image, and I'm just going to take a snapshot of it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I get the angle a little bit cooler. All right, I'm going to just take a snapshot. Right here. Oops. Nope. Take a snapshot of it. Chicka-pow. Copy. Paste. Let's go here. Paste. Now I will make this very, very faint. Get my pen. I'm going to zoom in. And I love engraving. And I love that style of artwork. So that's what we're going to do. So I have all these lines. I do this with mechanical stuff because it's just super easy in 3D. And it can give me all these lines that I can then use as a guide. Just get my pen going here. Let's turn off the smoothing. Let's draw the outline first. And I'm just going to trace over this drawing. I'm not going to worry about the lines being perfectly straight because I want it to look hand engraved. And I think it's going to be a cool kind of juxtaposition of styles of having, you know, a very mechanical, futuristic, I guess you could say, modern concept of a keyboard juxtaposed with kind of an old world traditional art style of like woodcut and engraving. So I'm going to do the outline, then I'm going to do the corners. Like that. that. Let's do this other one. Is this Kenneth Wayne work? No. Kenneth Wayne is out of my league, man. He's too good. That guy's a genius. I can't even compete with him. And you'll see why in just a second why I have all these lines, that I put all those lines on the wireframe. Bethany is both motivation and inspiration. Bethany, I heard that Bethany was Kenneth, the name of Kenneth's Trans Am. The name of the guy on the deck, his name is Lord Dundreary. Dundreary. Lord Dundreary. Just going to add a little woodcutness to this. I don't want to do that. Get the main portions done here. I probably could have just used the text tool for this, but I like drawing it. And this way I know it's in perspective. Yeah, it'd be cool to have that as one of the Jokers. I think it was more of just the time constraints that I didn't do a whole nother drawing for a different Joker. Lord Dundry is a fictional character that guy did in a play. So yes, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was, if the concept or idea originated with somebody similar. I think he's kind of, I think the character is kind of a satirical, comment on like the aristocratic class during that time. Kind of a buffoon, like a buffoon aristocrat or something. All right. The last part of this process, which is really going to be what gives it the kind of, Control S this because I haven't saved it. That's how ironic would that be if I lost this? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the engraving lines, and that's the reason why I had all these lines on here, because now I can super easily go in here and use these lines as a guide to guide me as I draw these engraving style lines. And that way they'll be with the form. Just curl up these edges here. They'll be with the form of the shape. What up, NC Fish On? What up? Is this a concept for the shirt or the cards that go with it, or both? Well, I definitely wasn't thinking of doing a deck, but yeah, sure, why not? Maybe I'll just use this as a repeating pattern. I don't know. Honestly, just wanted to start with a simple kind of rendering of the idea. And if a shirt comes of it, we'll see. I definitely think it'll make a nice t-shirt for sure. Yeah. I mean, if anything, it's just a fun exercise to keep my skills sharp. Control S. Like this side, it's going to be a little bit more in shadow. Add a little bit more value over here. Okay. This one's going to be a little bit harder because it's super. The angle of this is pretty steep. So it's going to be harder to keep these lines separated because I don't necessarily want to draw it just as a black shape. Random question. Why would you choose Kickstarter for Lord of the Rings over selling it from your website? What are the considerations? That's a very good question. And for a long time, it was, I had, originally planned to not do a Kickstarter just because I really don't like doing Kickstarters because they're a huge pain. Just all of the added complexities of a Kickstarter. And another thing is, I mean, I know that you guys would be Kickstarter backers, but the Kickstarter backer crowd are just, I mean, there's a lot of great people for sure, but the Kickstarter crowd is just ruthless. And with the added complexity of the complexities of running a Kickstarter, coupled with the ruthlessness of backers, is why I originally kind of thought to myself, well, maybe I don't do this on a Kickstarter. But then I just thought about, just from the successful opportunity from a business standpoint, because obviously I own a business, just the concept, I don't, like, I've been waiting too long to do a Lord of the Rings project. And on top of that, I'm going to spend a lot of time on it. I've already spent more time on it than most of my playing cards. And it's not that necessarily that I'm not giving my other decks, ample treatment. It's just Lord of the Rings is like my favorite story of all time, kind of a thing where, like, if I'm going to spend a long time on anything, or create a magnum opus, I guess you could say, that kind of thing, Lord of the Rings is that opportunity. And I don't, and I'm not, it's not a subscription, so I don't have to like rush it, or not to say rush it, but I don't have a timeline. The only timeline I have is basically when my license expires, but I have a 5-year license, but it's going to be extended anyway. So it's not like I have, a clock ticking, I guess you could say. But then from a business standpoint, there's so many people that can connect with the Lord of the Rings story because of whether or not they're fans or anything like that, I think that I think that I'll just be able to be more successful from a monetary standpoint, and also from just I guess you should say marketing standpoint, in terms of I think the ability for Kickstarter to utilize the platform of Kickstarter will be able to help the viralness or the more eyeballs see my project than if it was. Now, granted, I do ads and I purchase ads and stuff like that for my website, but I think that the ability for it to be more successful is using Kickstarter. Yeah, an additional exposure for King's Wallet for sure, because I'm going to get a lot of new customers that are Lord of the Rings fans, but may not necessarily be playing card collectors. But the hope, just like with anything, I bet a bunch of you guys, that are watching this may have not, 6 months ago, may have never thought twice about playing cards. But you may have found me somewhere. You may have found another playing card designer somewhere, and you found me. And then you now may be a King's Wild fan or a King's Wild customer that, you're buying my decks and that kind of thing. And so ultimately that's the hope. Now, granted, I definitely have my own thoughts of what Kickstarter is and how I like to run Kickstarters. I do not like Kickstarter projects that just, and I've done this before. I've been there and done that, and I've kind of figured out what I like and what I don't like. I do not like Kickstarters that will just start piling on trinkets and add-ons just to keep the funding goal going or to catch a stretch goal. Like, oh, we're going to do a coin. We're going to do another coin. We're going to do a case. We're going to do a butterfly pin. We're going to do a koozie. I guess you get my picture. I don't necessarily like that. And so my Kickstarters, especially my recent ones, and I haven't really done a Kickstarter in 2 years, I just like to keep it simple. And keeping it simple also dramatically cuts down on the headache of production. Because so many Kickstarters fail for one reason or the other, because, if your project fails, say you're a playing card project and your project gets delayed or you're behind because your koozies aren't being produced, and you're having to either hold up all the good stuff because you're waiting for your koozies to be printed when people really came for the deck of cards, and that's the meat and potatoes of your project. But you're having to hold all that up for koozies, and if you don't want to hold it up, you end up sending the decks, and then you have to waste a bunch of money on sending a bunch of stupid koozies later on. I don't know. That's just what I think. How limited with the Lord of the Rings decks will be? There will be definitely multiple editions. I'm not afraid to make multiple editions. When I say, I just said to myself, making a complex project with different stuff. There will most likely, the Lord of the Rings decks will probably mimic kind of my standard MO, like with my subscriptions, where, I've got a standard edition, a limited edition, and then a gilded edition. It'll be very similar to the way I do my subscriptions in terms of just how it's structured. Let me turn this image off. Draw some little holding lines here. Okay. I'm going to beef up this holding line, this outside line. I think it's pretty good. I'm just going to add some little blips and blops to the edge to give it more of a woodcut feel. Control S. I'm just going to do this because I want to. I'm going to put a paper texture, an old paper texture behind it, just to really get that that juxtaposition of old world and new world meet. Let me find my texture folder. I got too many folders. Textures. Where is it? Old paper. Where is it? Old paper. There we go. Let's just do one of these. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm just going to run. Mistborn is going to be early. Mistborn is very, very close. I would say we're probably, Greg is probably has one or two more cards to do, and he'll be finished with all the base drawings of the court cards. Then once he does that, I will then go and put the cards, put the court cards to paper. I mean, put them on the court cards and that kind of stuff. I'm just running some actions that I've developed that age. I didn't do much. Let me see here. Yeah, I did. So you can kind of see it ages this line work. Now I'm just going to add some noise. Okay. Let's see what we got here. This will add a little bit of value, but it's more for noise. Beside the literature and Federal 52 series of decks, do you have any other decks series planned? Well, I've got the Lord of the Rings. I've got Mistborn for next year. Those are both for next year. I'll probably end up doing, I mean, if I just get the Fellowship of the Ring deck out, I'll be happy for next year. But I do have the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers slated for next year. And if I can get both of those, I will be happy. Well, if I can just get one of them, I'll be happy. Now I'm going to add some, I'm going to just do this because I'm going to hit Control Z. I have these engraving brushes that I created and halftone brushes here. Let me see. It's two. That's pretty good. I'm just going to create a white layer. I'm just going to fill them with this kind of engraving style, a horizontal line of white. Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start out with a thinner one, and I'm going to work my way up, just so I can give the top a little bit lighter value. Just hit the whole thing. I'm going to go a little bit thicker now on the top part with the thicker lines. And beef up those lines and give the top a little bit lighter value. That'll also bring out those letters as well. Does Mistborn cover the trilogy? No, it just covers the first book. It was kind of a thing of like, it was my first time working with Brandon Sanderson, and they were kind of, testing me out, I guess you could say. My license just covers the first book. And it's kind of one of those things, if they like it, then they will, they'll probably let me do more. Kind of a thing. Okay, let me see what else I want to do here. I'm just going to add a little bit of noise on the outside. Just some speckles and such. I'm going to do black. Let's do one of these. Then what I can do is I can also go in with that horizontal line brush as well and do kind of a shadow layer. Well, I could let's do a darker, instead of doing the horizontal lines, let's do a halftone pattern. Let's check this out. That's too small. But a halftone pattern, I don't want to do a halftone pattern, because if I do a halftone pattern, it automatically brings it into a more modern feel, because halftone patterns are a relatively modern development when it comes to printmaking. Just trying to find one that's scale-wise where I want. That's what I want. Make a new layer. I'm going to feather the edge here so I can kind of get a blend. I'm going to put it back here. I don't know if I like that. Maybe too much. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm going to keep that out. However, what I can do, let's try this. Let's just try this. At this point, I'm just fiddling with it now, so I'm going to do a much bigger scaled one. So I'm basically going to fill this whole thing up with these black horizontal lines. Now what I can do is change the perspective of those lines to match the perspective of where these I'm just trying to match the perspective. I'm going to scale it up. Like that. Let me go a little bit more. Good. Let that transform. Okay, I'm going to make it invisible. I'm just going to go back in here. I'm going to go back in here and remind me, Griffin, to tell you, I want to give you a YouTube link to something that was about Beowulf that was my biggest inspiration when I did the Beowulf project. I'm going to paint out these floor lines because I'm not painting, I'm not erasing them. I'm just masking them out because I'm going to use those lines that I just made for this floor thing. Like that. And these over here. Now what I can do is come here. This may or may not look good. We'll see. I'm going to hit a mask on this, make a new mask. First thing I'm going to do is going to paint out the interior of the buttons. Like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an ellipse like this in that shape. Make a new layer, just fill it with black. Bring down the opacity a little bit, and now I'm going to change the perspective of this ellipse to kind of match up with the perspective of my keys. Probably bring it down a little bit in the back. Bring this edge out. Bring the opacity back up. Now I'm going to Gaussian blur this ellipse. Blur, Gaussian blur. I'm going to go a lot. Maybe like that. A little bit more. Right about there. Now I'm going to select this shape that I've made, and then now I'm going to go back to this mask and just going to paint out the negative space. Like that. And then what I can do is I can also then come in here. I'm gonna dupe this. Actually, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna duplicate this layer, and then I'm gonna nudge it up a little bit and over a little bit. I've duplicated those lines, and what that's gonna do is then I can go in and then paint out even more of the negative space, and then create even more, like one more step of value change. So I can come in here and paint this to where, you know, actually, let's do this. Let's do it as if it was like a cast shadow. So I'm going to get my lasso tool. Obviously, my light looks like it's coming from, you know, the top left. So we'll just make the cast shadow come from over here. corner of the cast shadow would be there. Let's see. All right, make a new layer. Fill it with black. Blur it. Quick question. I just recently got a black diamond Tally-Ho deck, and it has a double backer with a white back design. Was that back design ever produced in a deck? No, it was not. 'Twas not. All right, I'm going to come in here, paint this cast shadow up to this corner, up to that corner. And now what I can do is select that cast shadow, make it invisible, go back to this mask, and then paint out everything else in that darker layer. Like that. And it kind of creates a little bit. Let me finesse it over here. And that just kind of creates another cast shadow back there. Let me just clean this up. I had a little remnant over here that I forgot. Okay. Control S, done, saved. All right. I think that's about it. I feel good about that. What is this? What is this mess down here? Let me clean this up. There we go. And I'm going to take these two layers, merge them, and I'm going to unsharpen mask them to kit out that featheriness on them. So sharpen, unsharpen mask. It's a big image. I made it way too big. Really pump that up. Okay. Oops. So now I'm going to duplicate the image. First, I'm going to hit Control S. Duplicate the image. Duplicate. You know what I can do, just for giggles? I'm going to add a darker brown layer to the background just to pop it a little bit more. I made it a little bit too big because over here on this left side, my little ellipse has gotten cut off. So if I ever end up doing this as like a shirt design, I'm going to have to go back. There we go. Little pop, bring it back to the opacity. You know what? While I'm here, first of all, hit Control Z. Let's well, no, I haven't shipped the Kenneth Wayne Preston thing. Oh, I kind of gave it away. I bet the Kenneth Wayne Preston Joker is going to be awesome. It could possibly be Kenneth Wayne Preston in like a muscle shirt in front of a Trans Am, and it may have a picture of Jackson like in a dunce cap and a little twirly hat. I'm just saying, it could be. I don't know. I'll have to talk to Kenneth about it, but he doesn't like talking to me very much. I'm going to hit duplicate. I'm going to duplicate this whole thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and make this a t-shirt, like if I was making a King's Wild Thread shirt. How do I want to do this? Okay. The first thing I'm going to do, we'll say that I'm going to take off this shadow layer. And then, let's see, what is all this? Let's group this. Let's make it smaller. About like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a white layer in the back of it. On overlay. What the heck? Kenneth. What the heck is this? I swear. Let me see. Go away, Kenneth. Go away, Kenneth. You suck. I swear he's always doing weird stuff. Okay. Why is that? Okay, that's what we want. Screw you. Joey Bravo's awesome. Shut it. Shut it, Kenneth. All right, let's see here. Joey Bravo's a saint. What I should do is write a poem about like the hardships of not hitting Control Z. Let me take this layer off for just a second. The hardships of not hitting Control S, not Control Z. And and then just like lightly fading it in the background of the shirt design. All right, so I'm going to take this. I'm going to center it up. Now I'm going to duplicate it. I don't know how this is going to tessellate, but we'll see. It didn't really tessellate, but I don't know if I like it. I don't like that it's different. It's the same perspective and duplicated. The way I picture a Control Z, a Control S shirt would just be white background, black text, just repeating Control S, Control S, Control S, Control S. All right, let me see here. All right, I think that's about it. I am done for today. Peeps. Another day. I got to stretch. The fourth installment of Dawn's Early Light coming to an end. What is today? Today is Thursday, December 31st. I wish all of you fine people a wonderful New Year's Day and a Happy New Year. I will be here tomorrow at 5 a.m. Oh, yeah, Beowulf Link. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so if you go to YouTube and then click Julian Glover Beowulf, I'll still give you the link. I don't want to play it because I don't know. Let me see here. I don't want to play it because I don't want to get some kind of copyright thing. But Julian Glover's the guy that you may remember from, Indiana Jones, Last Crusade. He was the guy that made the wrong choice. Here's the link. I think that's it. I just shared it at like 66 seconds. Let me share the whole thing from the beginning. Copy. And here's the link. This video is a excerpt monologue from a play that he wrote where he kind of like, where he writes a story about Beowulf, and I have the book that's written from the play, and it's very, very short, but it is an excerpt from his play that he traveled doing, and it was basically just a monologue play where he stood up and did this whole thing memorized, this whole book memorized. And this is an excerpt from when Grendel is creeping in to the Heorot Hall for the first time. And it is just amazing. I mean, the first time that I listened to it, I got chills. It was awesome, just the way that he worded it and stuff. And the saying on the edge of the Beowulf deck, I can't remember what it says, like Commerce, whatever, this Old English. It's from the original text, but it's specifically from this. It's apart from his monologue where it's talking about the stalker, the walker in the night comes, creeping. And that's what that Old English says on the spine or the front of the Beowulf tuck case. So if you've got some time, take a listen to that. It's awesome. I think it is. But anyways, I'll be here tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. for the 5th installment and the first anything that I do for 2021. I hope you guys have a safe New Year's if you have New Year's Eve plans. It's been a great and awful 2020 on many levels, but I wish you guys a happy new year, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. See you guys.